This video is supported by patrons like you. If you'd like to become a patron, please head over to patreon.com/Matt Jarbo. Okay, so a couple months ago, the internet lost its mind, right? The internet absolutely, positively lost its mind when Sony pulled Spider-Man from the MCU. I mean, there was speculation abound. Everyone was yelling to the heavens, why? Why is this happening? Especially after the cliffhanger ending to Far From Home, which had just come out a little over a month earlier, the movie having crossed over the $1 billion mark. Everyone was like, I don't get it, I don't understand it. I went off a lot on it. And I was very happy to report that they found a way to come together. That according to Bob Iger and according to Tom Holland is the one who reached out in order to find a way to bridge the gap between the two studios, and that he made an impassioned plea to Bob Iger, and that is a story Bob Iger is sticking with. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. Hollywood likes to make up a lot of stuff. We tend to turn these stories into facts because that's all we really have. What we know, again, from the internal reporting is that ultimately it was Sony's fault the deal fell through because they kept Disney in the dark for 6 months before Far From Home came out. I'm not saying Disney did everything right. I'm simply pointing out that when you're being stonewalled by a company and then they pull it, they thought they had the upper hand. And when it comes to dealing with the fan base, they did not have the upper hand. The fans revolted, and Sony took the brunt of that hit. And so Sony came to the table and worked out a deal that basically saw Disney get whatever it wanted. But now we're getting a little bit more PR in that department. We're getting a little bit more positive spin on it, and I find that to be quite interesting. So, according to LRM here, Spider-Man fan outcry reportedly helped Spidey get back into the MCU. So, fan outcry, a lot of us on YouTube were very, very, very passionate about this. That was a big factor of this, right? That's one of the things that Tom Holland, I think, really responded to. Because when he says, I love you 3000, at D23, especially coming in right after this news broke, that meant a lot to MCU fans, and that meant a lot to his fans, and it meant a lot to me and everything else. I fully admit that. Like, I love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I would watch him even in Sony movies, but I still love him in the role, and I want him to stay there regardless. But but you could tell where his loyalties lied, and it's good that they came together. So here's what happened. The Hollywood Reporter recently spoke with Disney head Alan Horn and Sony boss Tom Rothman, where he asked what made the difference in regards to coming back to the table. And according to Alan Horn here, again, very political answer. He says here, the fan base, which is important to us all, seem to really respond to what Tom and his folks have done before with our people. They like the fact that the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Kevin Feige were involved in the 2 Spider-Man films. We heard feedback out there that suggested that joining forces once again was probably a really good idea. No, you heard not just feedback, it was outright scathing commentary on the internet, people shouting to the heavens, so upset for a while. And then of course both sides played it a certain way. Sony came out and said, well, Disney won't let Kevin Feige play with us anymore. And then Disney's all like, hey Feige, you want to do a Star Wars movie too? And Feige's like, all right, cool. And that blew out Sony's entire argument. And then Feige played it very, very cool, very calm, very collected. At D23, he was like, look, we got to make 5 movies with this character. It's a dream come true, but it was never going to last forever. Very much taking the high road, very much playing that game in the way that it needed to be played. Sony tried passing the buck. Feige just said it was a great experience, and he's sad that it's over, but he's very happy that he's like, don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened, sort of thing. And that really resonated well with fans. Now, you have to understand here, everything they were doing, they were already communicating. They were just bargaining with each other via the press, and Sony lost that PR war something fierce. And that's because really Sony was not in a good position, to really run it. If Venom would have been a better movie, but still as financially successful, people might be a little bit more open to it. But with Morbius on the horizon and whatever else they're working on over at Sony, it kind of feels a little bit weird right now. So anyway, them always kind of coming together seemed to make the most amount of sense. financially speaking. In fact, Tom Rothman agrees because he says here, this was a classic win-win, a win for Sony, a win for Disney, a win for the fans. The only thing I would say is that the news cycles and the rhythm of negotiations do not necessarily overlap. And this is, in the words of Shakespeare, a consummation devoutly to be wished. We would have gotten there, and then the news got ahead of some things because they fucked up bad. Right, when that Sony insider talked to Deadline, the guy from Deadline, and he gave him all the dirt, Sony wanted to negotiate in the press. They wanted things to say the same, and I get that. I fully understand their position, and they do have a couple legs to stand on, really, right? They had Venom's success, over $800 million worldwide for a non-Spider-Man connected, Spider-Man based kind of movie. And then they had the win of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse winning the best animated picture for last year, which it truly deserves. That movie is phenomenal. It's amazing. And I love it to death. I just love it. So there's so much that they had going for them in regards to this. And they felt that they could kind of, like beat their chest and go up to the mouse and just give them the middle finger and say, no, we want this because we're Sony. We're Sony, homie. We're Sony. And Disney's like, that all you got? Is that all you got? Huh? Is that all you got? Right? Like that's all they really had. That's all Sony. Like that's all everything Sony had. Marvel's like, we got the money. Really, it's what it boiled down to. And then, of course, they came together and they worked out a deal that ultimately benefited Disney more than Sony in that regard. But what's weird is that LRM cuts off this particular part of the interview where the interviewer actually asks, will this partnership continue? And it goes on to say, Tom, you've shown that you can do Spider-Man without Marvel on the animated film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And he says, yes, we have, but I agree with my distinguished colleague, then this is a classic win-win, right? So, it doesn't necessarily answer, will the partnership continue? But when he says it's a win-win for everybody, that's effectively saying that it's going to continue, right? It makes the most sense financially speaking. Sony wants to make money. With the shutdown of PlayStation Vue yesterday, the announcement for that's a pretty big deal. Sony is having trouble on its financial side when it comes to theatrical releases. Q3 for this year only earned $3.7 million in profit for their Sony Pictures. That's not a lot of money, right? That's not a lot of money. And obviously Spider-Man Far From Home really, really helped out with those returns. But yeah, and then even Sony Pictures is still kind of like Sony Pictures Television doesn't have a streaming service, but they're licensing their content out, and that might be keeping things going for right now. But eventually that's going to run into a dead end as all of these other companies decide that they just want to keep making content themselves and screw paying licensing fees when they find they can make more money with better curated original content. And that's where I think this deal is mostly going to find its legs or its footing, is the fact that in the future, Sony is going to need Marvel in order to keep their entertainment division afloat, considering that they flat out said yesterday that we're closing down PlayStation Vue, which is a pay TV service, so part of Sony Pictures Television and all that other stuff, in order to focus on more video games, because that's where the primary profit is. And that should be a massive warning sign to everyone at Sony Pictures. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. We'll have to wait and see whether or not there's actual... if what happened, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think at the end of the day, Sony's going to work with Marvel until the bitter end when they're forced to either sell the rights back or sell the company. But if they play it right, if they work it right, if they basically just kind of like go to Disney and go to Kevin Feige and say, you have access to our characters, we'll do whatever you say, let's just make that money. And Feige will be like, kiss the ring, and we'll do it. And they'll do it, and they'll make their money. They'll make a lot of money. And they can still do the animated stuff on their own, but bringing everything over to the MCU is good for business. And it's, I think, the only thing keeping Sony Pictures alive right now. Really, honestly, I do. But anyway, your thoughts, your opinions, let me know down in the comments below. I really appreciate it. If you guys made it this far, go ahead and type Spider-Man into the chat. Be sure to like the video. Be sure to subscribe to the video. And if you guys are a new patron, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. You're helping keep the channel afloat. Love you lots. Have yourself a great day, and peace out.